If you have an info offer or a marketing agency and you want to double your business without increasing your close rate, which I know sounds crazy, I'm going to show you exactly not only how that's possible, but how we routinely do it for companies exactly like yourself. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Calvin.Angel. I am the head of sales for a sales training program called Agency Closers and the head coach in that as well, which teaches the exact sales process that was used at Bad Marketing to take them from $400K a month to over $2 million a month. So we have done a lot in this space. I'm going to break down exactly how you can implement the exact same things today to improve your business, collect way more cash without getting any better at sales. One thing I need you guys to absolutely internalize before we jump into all the fun stuff so you can maximize this information is this principle. Let's say there's two closers. They both have 10 book calls. One of them has a 70% show rate and a 30% close rate. The other one has a 50% show rate and a 40% close rate. Who's a more effective rep? Now, the right answer is the person who actually has a higher show rate, funny enough. And so I say this because on the surface, it could look like someone else is a better rep than one another, but in reality, when you do the math, the person who has a higher show rate in this scenario actually has a greater output, which equals 2.1 in this scenario. The person who has a 40% close rate, its output is only 2. Now at scale, this can dramatically change things, which is the most important part. But really what I want you to internalize is that if you increase show rate by 10% or close rate by 10%, it actually creates the same output. So if we took the closer from 40% to 50% close rate, that's one thing that we could do and train on. Or we could take a show rate from 50% to 60%, and it would be the same output as if you increase close rate by 10%. And so I preface this because it's so much easier to improve show rate, which is really more of a process issue, than close rate, which is a big skill issue and needs a ton of time and investment into solving. So it's much easier to solve show rate than close rate. And that's the focus I want you to have when it comes to learning how to maximize your business. All right, so before we go any further, I need to make this quick disclaimer because this is extremely important to know for making decisions based on data. So one of the things I just said, right, is that when you increase your show rate by 10% and your close rate by 10%, then it has the same output, which is not true in all scenarios. And so this is a concept I want to talk about, which is relative change. The reason I said that though is because it is typically very, very similar for relative change to be about the same. And you'll see that in this example. And in general too, it's way easier to fix show rate than it is close rate when you're just like actually analyzing your data and tweaking things, because increasing your show rate is a process issue. Increasing your close rate is a skill issue. And it's a lot easier to fix a process because it takes no skill really compared to closing, which takes a ridiculous amount of training and skill to actually increase and execute on. So when we think about relative change, I know it sounds maybe a little bit complicated. It's really simple. It's really just talking about what number we're starting from to where it is now and what we're trying to get to. What is that difference? So if we look at from 1 to 2, this is 100% relative increase because we're doubling. If this number was going from 1 to 1.5, that'd be a 50% relative change increase. And I'll show you guys the math real quick as well. Very simple. All you're using is this equation. So it's saying we're going from 2, right, which is the new value. And this could be, I'll show you an example here for closers and show rate, etc. But if we take 2 and we subtract 1, which is the original, we get 1, right? And then we divide that by 1 and you're going to get 1. And 1 times 100 is 100%. So that's what I mean by relative change. And let me show you this example with closers as well. So if we have the first closer who has a 50% show rate, 40% close rate, this other one with a 70% show rate and 30% close rate, we may think, okay, cool. Most people just focus on this. How can I increase close rate? Show rate, it's just like depends on the leads and how good the week is. That's how most people treat their show rate. And they just focus solely on their close rate, which in my humble opinion, we should be doing both, improving show rate and close rate, but we should really fix on show rate. And so I'm going to show these two equations to really make it crystal clear. Okay, so when I pull up this example right here, you're going to see where the new value we're trying to get to for close rate in this example is 50%, because as you can see here, it's new minus original divided by original, right? So we take the new close rate we want to get to, and then we subtract it by the actual close rate right now, and then we divide that by the actual close rate, and then we get relative change. So you'll see right here when I pull up my handy dandy calculator that if we go from 50 and we subtract 40 to see the relative change and difference this would actually have on sales. We do that. So we take 50 minus 40 divided by 40 and we get 25%. So as a sales manager, as an off runner, whatever the case is, when you're thinking about optimizing your numbers and improving everything in terms of efficiency, you have to factor in what is the relative change that this will make on numbers. And so in this scenario, if you collect 100K at a 40% close rate and all you change is your close rate and you bump it up by 10%, you're also going to improve all of your numbers mathematically. So it's actually going to be 100K. Now, since you have a 25% relative increase, that means that you're going to multiply the amount you did cash collected. So in this example, let's say you did 100K last month, and then you multiply that by 1.25, which is the relevant change, and that gets us $125,000. So you can see how you can literally math your way to however much money you want to make, and ultimately what you need to focus on inside of your business to actually improve the total cash collected, which is the ultimate goal at the end of the day. Now that's one way that you could get to that number and improve the amount of cash you're collecting. Another way is to increase your show rate. And so it's the same 10% difference, right? But very similar relative change. So when we do the same equation, we take 60, which let's say this is where we're going to get our show rate. We want to go from 50 to 60. So we start with 60, subtract 50, and then we get 10. We divide that by 50 and we get 20. And by the way, you just multiply this by 100, you're going to get 20, which is the percentage. And so as you can see, both of these, you're improving the numbers by 10%, but they have very similar relative change. And so this is what I'm talking about. Even though you're increasing the percentage both by 10%, the relative change on data is a little bit different. Now it's easier to increase your show rate from 50% to 60% than it is to go from a close rate of 40% to 50%, because it takes way more skill, time, and attention to doing so. And so in this example, what I want you to see is that we can get almost the same output, meaning we can go from 100K to 120,000 by just tweaking a couple things in our process. You don't have to get any better at sales. You can just tweak how you get people to show up, and you have basically the same relative change here. So as you can see, that's why this video is going to be about how to maximize your show rate so that the process is out of the way and you can just focus on skill set and increasing your close rate. So without further ado, let's dive right into the fun stuff. All right, let's dive right in. And I don't mean into this fucking dumpster. I mean into most of your guys' sales processes, okay? And the average sales process for getting someone to show up is this simple. They let automations do everything and they show up to a call. Most people barely make any calls or efforts to get a hold of them because they're either trained to just call leads, don't call your appointments before the appointment, which is crazy to me. Or if they are calling leads and appointments, they maybe try once, max twice before a call. You need to relentlessly follow up with these people to get them to show up. And so the reason that this process is trash is because there's a much more efficient way to do this. And so I call this the show rate maximization process. I know this is like super fancy title, right? But what happens is as soon as a lead comes in and you call them within 5 minutes, there's literally a 22x more likelihood chance of someone converting than if you wait 30 minutes. So a 25-minute difference, but a massive difference in conversion rate, not pickup rate, not show up rate, but conversion rate. And this was done by a Harvard study. If you haven't heard of this before, you're living under a rock, but it is super important that you call these people within 5 minutes, your closers, whatever the case is, and they double dial and text every time. If you're not double dialing, your pickup rate is nowhere near as good as it could be. And the reason we double dial is because double dialing is important with D&D features inside of carriers. So most of the time when you call someone once, it's not going to pick up because they could have D&D enabled, which is do not disturb. If you call them twice, it actually surpasses that feature and rings their phone. So they're way more likely to answer and pick up, especially when they just opted in. If you just think about it, right? Someone just saw your ad, they saw your VSL, now you're very top of mind and they get a phone call from you. So there's a couple things that happen, right? They actually remember who you are. Number one, like people will forget in 5-10 minutes. And on top of that, them remembering who you are, which means you're more likely to have a better conversation. It's also a mere reflection of what it's like working with your company. Because if you're calling them as soon as they opt in, they're like, wow, these guys are really on top of it. And that's the exact feeling that we want your prospects coming into the call. And their first interaction with your company should be that you guys are dialed and on top of it. And the only way to do that is to call these guys fast. There's no shortcuts around it. And so calling them within 5 minutes is the first step. And you'll see right here, I have a couple examples of how we track this. So you're gonna get a new application, right? Set up a Zapier automation, super simple. From here, you're gonna get name, email, phone number, and notes if you have them. Then the first thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna select this little dial emoji, which is like a telephone, like a red one, or this phone emoji. And you're either gonna use a check mark or an X. A check mark is what it sounds like is when someone actually picks up, and then you'll see there's a disposition from the closer that they called them in the time period, which was in a minute, and also book the appointment. And then here you'll see if it's an X for, again, the speed to the lead, but then the outcome, which is they didn't pick up. So that's exactly how you want it tracked, because they're either going to answer or they're not. And you want to make sure that is very evident so that when they're scrolling back through leads for the week, they can see, oh yeah, this person didn't answer. I'm going to go reach out to them. Now, they should already have tags on different leads. If you don't already have that set up, you definitely should. For people who have like no-showed or canceled, anything like that, you can add a tag inside of Go High Level or your CRM, so you can easily create like a smart list of that type of person, and they can just dial them automatically. We do the same thing for people who are unresponsive. We just tag them with unresponsive. When they create a smart list, they can literally just show, okay, all leads that were created in the last week, whatever time frame you want, and then that were unresponsive, boom, there's your dial list every single day to get a hold of people who are unresponsive. This is how you make sure leads do not just fall through the cracks. So the next step in this process is after you call them, they're probably going to answer, especially since you're calling them so fast. And so you are going to triage them. Everything is diverting back to a triage. If they don't answer in the first 5 minutes, you're going to relentlessly follow up until you get a hold of them to triage them. And this will look like different things because a lot of context, but generally speaking, you're either in two buckets. You have a ton of lead flow and you can triage really hardcore, which just means qualify, or you don't have that many leads to work with. So you have to be a lot linear on your triaging qualification process, because it's better for the salesperson or yourself to get more reps actually selling than it is to just qualify. Oh, like they're not my ICP. They're not the exact person I want, right? But when you actually get a hold of them and triage them, I'm making a totally separate video on this that breaks down exactly how to do this with scripting, whether you sell a low ticket or it's just like a normal opt-in. You're going to have that process dialed in, but generally speaking, on the triage call, you're getting clarity on surface level goal and motivation that they have for why they booked the call. And then you're also getting surface level pain, so you can take that and then bring it into the sales call and dig way deeper into it. You don't want to get into crazy specifics before the call, because that's the whole point of the sales call in the first place. So on the triage call, you get clarity on what's their goal, what's the problem that they're facing, why did they book the call, like what are they hoping to get out of working with you guys as a company. At the very end of the call, you're going to send them pre-call material. This is extremely important. Pre-call material is what warms up your prospects before a call so that they have way more awareness on who you are, what you do, why that's important, and ultimately why they should show up to the call in the first place. Because if there's no reason to show up to the call, you're going to get way more no-shows because they don't see any value that they're getting from it. And so when you call them, number one, these are all human touch points. So people feel way worse no-showing a robot that they're getting automated text messages from than someone who seems real and actually called them and they spoke to them on the phone. They're way less likely to no-show an actual human than they are a robot, generally speaking. And so on this pre-call material, there's a couple things that work well. If you have bare minimum in the very beginning, just your thank you page, which should be like a pre-call VSL. Maybe you have breakout videos with FAQs, whatever it is. We got to send them resources so they're warmed up on what you do, so you can spend way more time selling on the sales call instead of just educating. And the way you're going to bring up the pre-call material is like this. You're going to say, hey, by the way, I want you to check out this video. It's a requirement so that you have the most context for what we do and how we'll help with everything you just mentioned to me. And I need you to go through that so that you have the most context for our chat, and ultimately we can have the most productive conversation possible. And then what you're going to do is shoot them a text with the link right on the call. You're like, hey, did that come through? And you're just going to literally walk them through and guide them through clicking on it and watching the video. And part of people's problem with going through and consuming pre-call material is procrastination. Most people never even click on the link. So when you pull up that video, you're going to tell them, hey, tap on that link. Cool. You see the big play button? Just go and tap that for me. I want to make sure it works. Sometimes it's a little finicky. Okay, cool. Yep, I see it. It's playing. Sweet. Put that on 1.5x speed. And do you have like 5-10 minutes or so? Okay, sweet. You'll be able to crank that out in like 5 or 10 minutes on 1.5x speed. Just go through that right now. That way you're all set for the call. And then once you do that, could you shoot me a text real quick right after you're done, just so I know you're all good to go? And they're like, yeah, perfect. Then you're just like, hey, bye from there. The most important thing is that you're making them go through it right there on the call. Like they're literally playing it. They have it open. And even if for whatever reason, some crazy shit happens, they at least have it on their phone. If they go back to it, it's going to open right back up. So they're more likely to actually watch it right there. And so what you're going to do if they're like, oh no, like I don't have 5 to 10 minutes. I'm like super busy right now, whatever. You're just going to ask them, okay, cool. Not a problem. Like when are you going to go through that? Or when are you going to watch it? And they're going to give you a time. After they give you a time, we're then going to ask, hey, can you shoot me a text once again at that time once you go through it, just so I know like you're all good to go on my end. Okay, cool. Once we do that, if they don't respond to your text, you now have a really good reason to follow up. You're like, hey, what happened, John? You know, did you get abducted by aliens? Or like, I didn't hear from you, you know? So the best way to hold people accountable and actually reach out to them is through humor. It's very, very disarming because you're releasing endorphins in their brain and they feel way more in like a happier mood to just be kind of talkative with you, if you will. So what we want to do is say, okay, cool. When you be able to go through that, text me the actual time when you go through it. And if they don't, you're going to call them and you're going to say, hey, what happened? Did you get bored? Did you get abducted by aliens? One of those things is going to get these people to laugh and say, no, I just need to go through it, whatever the case is. Or maybe they did go through it and they just forgot to text you. They're like, yeah, I actually watched all of it. Sweet. That is our entire job, is to now hold them accountable. And this is going to happen the morning of the sales call. This can happen the day before if they book in a day ahead of time. Whatever the case is, we want to call them as many times as possible before the sales call to get a hold of them and for them to go through the pre-call material and actually consume it so that every single person you get on the phone with, they actually know who you are, what you do, why it's important for any of that, and then showering them with social proof to build trust and actually show that you guys can bring results. So that's the entire process. It's very, very straightforward, nothing crazy complicated, but that's what's going to dramatically increase show rate and close rate inside of your business by monitoring. Number one, are your salespeople even doing this? Are you as a salesperson doing this? Do you guys monitor your speed to lead? If you don't, start doing it and double dial and text. You can remember that forever. Call them as many times as possible to get a hold of them. Obviously, you're not going to fucking call them 1,000 times in the first 3 minutes, but call at different times of the day when you think they would be available. Like I said, before work, lunchtime, after work, any of those things, those are great times to call people because they're more likely to be available, generally speaking. Now, outside of that, it's fairly straightforward. Lead comes in, you're going to double dial, you're going to text them, you're going to call them within 5 minutes for speed to lead. You're going to triage them. On that triage, you get them to open up the pre-call material. They press play on the video. You ideally have them go through it right there on the call, and you just hang up as they're watching the video. Worst case, you ask them what time they go through it. If they can't go through it like right on that call, then you have them shoot you a text once they're completed with it, so that either way, if they don't shoot you a text if they watch the video, you have a reason to call them and hold them accountable and make a joke. Did you get abducted by aliens? Did you get bored? Like, what happened, right? Making sure that these guys consume that pre-call material. So again, you have the highest show rate and close rate humanly possible. So the key caveat in all this, if you're a sales manager or an offer owner or agency owner, whatever the case is, and your closers aren't already doing this and or setters, you need to make sure that you're reminding them 24/7 on morning meetings, on Slack, and then you're also rewarding them for actually doing this. And so what we constantly want to be doing, you'll see in a lot of these screenshots, I'm emoting, right, on Slack, saying fire emojis, bang, whatever, check mark. Anything that reinforces good behavior, you need to do that so that they actually are consistent with it, which then forms a habit until eventually you don't have to remind them. It's just the standard. You need to remind your closers to call them as soon as possible every single day, to track whether or not they called them by holding up these emojis until eventually it becomes a habit and you don't have to do anything. They just automatically do it. If they fall off course, then obviously help them get back on the horse, back on track, and actually continue to implement this process of notifying what happened with leads and talking about the disposition and speed leads so you can monitor it. Now, if this is increasing, let's say you're tracking this, right? and you notice like, man, my speed to lead's like 30 minutes, an hour or longer, and it's consistent. And the reason is because these salespeople are on calls. That's how you know logically that you need to hire a setter where this is their sole job, is to focus on speed to lead and booking appointments for like no-shows, reschedules, etc. But that's how you'll know it makes sense for your offer. If they still have good speed to lead, meaning within like 5, 10, 15 minutes max, if they have good speed to lead there, it's not really a requirement to have a setter. But once it's at like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour or longer, you definitely need to hire a setter to make sure they're improving the speed to lead here. So you guys can, again, have the highest show rate possible and close rate as well, because they're going through the pre-call material. So last thing I'll say, if you guys want some help implementing this into your company, literally just hit me up directly on Instagram. I have my link down below. You can hit me up on socials, drop me a follow, drop more sauce. Plus, check out the rest of my YouTube channel as well. I'm going to link some videos down below that you can check out for the exact triage process that I use with scripting, whether you have a low ticket or it's just a normal opt-in process. You'll be able to see that entire process for how to triage as well. But other than that, hope you guys have a wonderful day. Keep killing it. Implement this. Information means nothing without implementation. So implement this as soon as possible. It is simple, but it is not easy. So implement it so that you can get way better results in your company or as a salesperson.